Welcome back on board the Starship. I'm talking with Andrew Johnson, who is researching the subject of chemtrails. Are they real or are they a figment of people's imagination? Now, in order to try and get to the bottom of it, you bought some radio equipment which gathers data from flight's transponders. I'll just explain. The transponder is a device that's fitted in every commercial aircraft which sends out the signal of its geographical position, its speed, and also its tag number, so you can identify that plane. You can buy a device. Tell us about the device and what it does, Andrew.
Right, yeah. The device I decided to get, it's quite expensive, but you can get them off eBay. You know, it's an aviation enthusiast device. It's called the AirNav radar box.
Right.
And you know, you're looking at like about £400 to get one of these.
Plugs into your normal PC.
That's right. Plugs into a USB port. It's a little box. It's USB powered. It's about the size of you know, a DVD case.
Right.
If you put 3 DVD cases stacked together, it's about that sort of size.
And it receives the signel from radio.
That's right, and it's basically a radio receiver. That's all it is. All it is a radio receiver. I think it's operating on UHF frequency. I'm not sure what frequency range it is, but it's something like UHF, I think. It will give you the altitude in most cases. In many actually, I've measured this now. About 20% of the aircraft that I can pick up where I live give you the positional data. It has a range, where I've got my aerial set up, it has a range of about 130 miles. So it can pick up aircraft within a 130 mile radius of my house. And it will plot these on some software in real time on your PC. On a map. Yeah. So you plug it in, you get the map display up, and you can see the dots gradually going across on your map. And you can see this happening. And when it identifies the aircraft, it will log on to an internet database, and it will download all the information it can for that aircraft, including the source and destination airports, the type of aircraft, the airline, and there's another thing called the squawk code, which I can't remember.
So it's using the internet to get that data.
Yeah, Okay. Some of it comes in. You basically get about 12 bits of data directly from the signal, but then it uses the registration number as an index into the internet database, and it will even send you a picture of the exact, not a picture of the type of aircraft, but the actual aircraft. When it can access a picture of the aircraft in the airliners.net database, so I could video the aircraft. And get the trace from the AirNav box at the same time. But you know, you run into this problem that only about 20% of the aircraft actually broadcast their position. So that means 80% of them are not broadcasting their position.
This is commercial flights you're talking about. So why would that be then? Surely they all would have to broadcast it. So
well, I think the ADS-B system is kind of like a backup system.
Right.
And obviously the air traffic controllers probably have another system.
Right.
There's another one called Mode S, and I think obviously the air traffic controllers have their own radar system, which is actually beaming a signal from the radar to the aircraft and getting it bounced back that way. And then I've actually been collecting statistics about this to try and make some measurements to get some handle on the level of air traffic. And the reason why I did that was because when I wrote off to the Civil Aviation Authority to ask about what had caused this grid, they said they had no information about what flights went over my house on a given date. They didn't have that information in a database anywhere, which surprised me. So that I then had to decide to invest in trying to get that information using my own means, you know.
So what have you managed to glean so far then from your analysis?
The most interesting thing happened on the 5th of March this year, and I'm in the process of still writing this up, but the most interesting thing, one incident that happened was on the 5th of March I picked up 2 flights which were EasyJet flights, and I took a video of this. You know, I've got the video clips of this, and one EasyJet flight was leaving a big long trail that came just to the west of my house. The plane was an A319-111, and the flight was travelling, I think, at 30,200 feet. In fact, I've got the figures here. 32,000 feet was the minimum height in this sort of minute period. 33,675 was the maximum. And it was ground speed was between 380 and 390 knots. That flight was leaving a big long trail. Then an hour later, I had another EasyJet flight, identical aircraft, 32,900 feet to 33,000 feet, so it's basically the same height within about 500 feet or so. Airspeed was the same, 384 knots, in other words in between 380 and 390. No, just an ordinary short trail, not persisting. Same day, same type of aircraft, same airline, both were UK domestic flights. One's leaving a big long trail stretching right down to the horizon, and one's just a short trail. This was a big surprise. I didn't expect to be able to pick up that sort of comparison. So I wrote to EasyJet and I asked them for an explanation, which was basically, well, is it the fuel? Is it what? Tell me the explanation. Was it the way that this plane was moving in the sky? Was it the jet stream? What's the explanation? If there's a legitimate explanation for the difference in this persistent trail and the non-persistent trail, only an hour apart in time, right over my house. These flights were perhaps 5-6 miles apart, something like that. Maybe as a guess, maybe less. So what is the reason? Why have we got this persistent trail and not persistent? And I sent this letter by post. I sent them the video clips. I sent them a dump of the data from the box on a disk. No response. They never responded. I sent it by email, and they responded the next day saying, we cannot answer your operational query, and gave me a phone number.
Right. So again, it's curious but inconclusive. Would you agree?
Yeah. Basically, it's inconclusive. I haven't had an explanation. There could be a perfectly legitimate explanation as to why one plane left a big long trail and the other didn't.
Now let's come on to some of the theories, and they are theories that people claim may be in these chemtrails. Where do you want to start, Andrew? Because there's several, aren't there?
Yeah, I mean, some people are saying that the chemtrails are being done to poison us. So what's happening is they're putting in chemicals into the chemtrail which are, for example, are immunosuppressive. So they don't actually make you sick, but they may be affecting your immune system and reducing your ability to fight off disease. That's possibly one example. The other is that
it means to then what, ultimately control the population?
Yes,
or
kill, or introduce some infection, which then would have a vast effect on the population.
All right.
Some people claim, for example, that the swine flu vaccination was linked to chemtrails, in that the chemtrails would be done, then you'd have the swine flu vaccination, and those two substances, when they met in your body would have
then create
a catalytic effect. Yeah, and then you drop dead or become very ill or whatever.
So it's one component of a project that's when met with another thing, it then.
Yeah. No, and I've really seen no evidence that's the case. The problem is actually tying up, and I was having quite a long email debate with somebody about this. The problem is, again, it's like a lot of these things, that it might be true. It could be true, we don't know, but there's no evidence yet to say, well, we've definitely seen these planes go over. This substance has descended from the sky. We've got it tested in a laboratory and found that this actually aluminium did actually come out of the back of this plane.
So that's another theory, barium and aluminium.
Yeah, or whatever toxic agents.
And the purpose of barium and aluminium would be what?
Well, in terms of barium, Rosalind Peterson has detected elevated levels of barium and aluminium in the water samples over a period of several years in Mendocino County in California. So we'll just mention that, and that's on her website, which is californiaskywatch.com. So you can go and look at that documentation if you wish. There's another group in Australia which appears to have had a similar result there. They've seem to have measured raised levels of barium and aluminium in their samples. I think there's several places in America too, other places apart from California, that have done this.
Are there cases where the military, through freedom of information, or like where secret projects are kept secret for so many periods of time, where they have experimented with spraying parts of the population?
Yes.
So there is projects that have been admitted to.
Of course, and there was one that was featured in the Guardian newspaper, I think in 2002, and I've written a little report where I've collated some of the information about this, and that references a report which was released, which talks about zinc cadmium compound being released, I think, in the 50s and 60s to see how it would spread among the population. This was toxic, and this was released onto the public, I think,
the UK?
In the UK, yeah, without the public's consent.
Yeah.
And it was literally a toxic chemical being sprayed from the back of an aircraft.
So anyone who has any doubts that, there's no way people in our government would authorise such a horrific thing, putting things in the air, they can look at that.
That's right. It's already been admitted.
So what would the reason for putting barium and aluminium in these trails be, if people are right in what they say?
Well, my contention is that I feel that currently, from the observations that I've done, that the chemtrailing is something to do with weather control and modification, and the barium comes into that because I think barium has specific properties. For example, when you go for an X-ray, they'll give you a barium meal if they're doing a stomach X-ray or possibly an angiogram or something, and it's because barium is radio opaque. So in other words, it will block the X-rays. So we know that barium has some specific property which will allow it to block the X-rays. So I think that if you were to put that into some chemical compound, let's assume it is being sprayed at some point, I think it's to change the electrical properties of the atmosphere. And looking, for example, at what happened on 9/11 with the hurricane and how that appears to have been steered, that's what it looks like to me, at least. I think that was done with some type of field effect technology, and my view in very quick summary is that the chemtrailing, if it is being done, is being used to make that process easier or more accurate or more effective. That they can steer around these sort of the cloud systems or the storm fronts or the cold fronts. They can guide them more easily with this. I guess it would be spaceborne technology. And Scott Stevens, the Idaho weatherman, I've got a clip that will show of him. He also thinks that weather control is involved, and I'd like to show that slide.
So this is a weatherman. He thinks that there's weather modification going on.
That's right.
Okay.
I'll go to that.
Yeah.
I'll go to that slide now.
Yeah.
So if we look at slide 75, what we've got here is Scott Stevens, and he went on a discussion on Coast to Coast a few years ago, and he's got this picture from 2004, and you can clearly see on this picture a square cloud.
Right.
So how can you have a square cloud?
Right.
And he explains that in that terrain, there would be no reason for a square cloud to form. And he also points out in this little clip that I've got that I sort of play in the presentations that I've given about this, that there are many anomalies on that picture. Clouds actually appearing at regular intervals and this sort of thing. And then there's a square cut out in the cloud that you can see. Many anomalies just on that one picture, and he studied these over a period of years, and he eventually said that he started to mention them to viewers, but then eventually found he couldn't continue, and he eventually left his weatherman's job.
Now, can we bring in HARP at this point, which is the project to beam up energy into the ionosphere? It's in Alaska. Could it be that they're spraying stuff to aid that whatever HARP is for?
A lot of people believe that chemtrails and HARP are intimately interwoven.
Right.
And they say that the energy is being beamed into the ionosphere, and the chemtrails are like causing all these grid patterns to distribute the energy or something, but it's all very vague.
Yeah.
Cliff Carnicom, and I think he's mentioned HARP, in that if you look at the patent for the HARP technology, which is owned by Bernard Eastland, it does appear that there may be some type of link to something which might be associated with the chemtrails. Now, I'm sort of hand waving a bit here because I haven't studied it. So for me, the link between chemtrails and HARP is unproven.
Right.
All we can say is that there may be a link. I don't like the idea of what HARP is doing, putting a megawatt or 50 megawatts of electricity into the ionosphere. It doesn't sound like a great idea to me.
So we come on to geoengineering. What's this, Andrew?
This kind of follows on from Scott Stevens. And to me, this looks like an example of geoengineering. In other words, using technology of some kind to modify the environment. And I've got here a set of animated radar images which are showing the radar trace of rainfall. And on these images, you could see patterns of circular rainfall. The rainfall appears in a radial pattern. And this is in multiple instances, and you can see little bands, little linear bands of rain forming in amongst the more natural weather
I do
patterns.
remember on Colin Andrews' website he had some over Australia.
That's right.
Huge circular grid-like cloud formations.
Yes, that's right, and that was last year.
Yeah.
And these have never really been properly explained. They're just called radar anomalies.
So what, I mean, what is your explanation as to the satellite images on Colin Andrews' website, where it's just like, it looks like the spokes of a bicycle or something?
Absolutely, it does. You know,
we're covering a huge area as well.
It is, yeah. It's a vast area, and we've got one from May 2010 this year from America with lots of rings, and so, you know, and we've got one from Switzerland as well. This is on slide 61. So, and the Australia is on slide 62.
Yeah, that's it there. Yeah.
So, you know, what are these things?
So this is actually the spokes in that's actual cloud there that we're looking at on the left there.
Yeah, I believe so.
So that's a phenomenal image, isn't it? And I believe that they have, the meteorologists have tried to explain that one away, haven't they?
Yeah, they've tried to just explain it as, one of the explanations that I've read on another website is it's to do with anomalous propagation, whereby when you get the radar signal being used to measure the rainfall, if it impinges into the rainfall cloud at a certain angle and with a certain strength, then it appears to you get some type of oscillation effect.
Right. So what they're saying is that is an erroneous image.
Yeah, I mean,
it's not displaying what it actually is.
Yeah,
it's a problem like in the measurement technology, which is making an image which doesn't actually look like that. If you looked at it with the naked eye, that's what they're saying.
Yeah,
right.
Absolutely. And then the final thing with the chemtrails that we can come on to for now, there's a lot of information to get through, is the subliminal images. And we got this, which we can bring the picture up here. Somebody contacted me about a commercial which was made in 2005, which was featured a segment from the Railway Children film from the 1970s. And this person said, oh, look, there's a chemtrail in the 1970s Railway Children film. And I basically went and checked this out, and the chemtrail wasn't in the Railway Children film at all.
But it was in an advertisement where they'd used a clip.
Correct.
So they've inserted a trail when they've made the advert.
Correct. And a friend of mine, Phil Morris, wrote to the company that made the commercial, and they actually admitted they deliberately put it in. You know, it wasn't just an accident. They hadn't accidentally composited it in because of the sky. You know, the clip art for the sky that they'd used. They deliberately put this in, and the commercial was about railway travel, but yet they're putting in an image which makes you think of air travel.
So what was their explanation for that?
They wanted to make it a more modern look. They were bringing the railway children up, you know,
into the modern era.
Into the modern era because it was a modern train. But at the same time, they wanted to romanticise the golden age of train travel. So it was all very peculiar. You can read this letter on my website because I've posted it, so you can make your own judgment on that. And then finally, we've got things like Over the Hedge movie, which is a completely CGI film generated inside a computer. The way they've normalised the image of the sky is to add chemtrails into it, or contrails, whichever name you want to give them. Why on earth can't they just put an ordinary fluffy cloud or two in there to make the sky look less plain? No, they haven't done that. They put a chemtrail in there. And then we've got a book cover with a chemtrail grid on it, which I discovered in a bookshop a couple of years ago. So why have these subliminal images being put into things for us?
So in summary then, Andrew, what can we say? I mean, could we say there is no smoking gun for chemtrails yet, but we look for further evidence?
I mean, yeah, I think we're looking at an accumulation of evidence which points to something going on. I can't say hand on my heart exactly what it is, but I suspect based on the stuff that I've observed and the increasing number of weather anomalies we're seeing, my bet would be that if there is indeed a spraying program going on a large enough scale, and it appears to me that there is, but it's very difficult to sort out the normal from the abnormal. It's primarily to do with weather control.
All right, Andrew, thanks very much indeed for coming in again, and I'm sure we'll probably have you on again to discuss one of your other areas of research. Thank you. And it just remains for me to say, keep your eyes on the skies for the chemtrails, keep your feet on the ground, and tell all your friends about this show.
The Rich Planet Starship is sponsored by Geared4.com online bikes, clothing and accessories.
I will be speaking in Newcastle upon Tyne on Thursday the 7th of October 2010. Doors open at 7